We'll go over general principles of deadlifting first. A lot of this is just about how can we make sure that we're using your strengths as best we can. So you need to critically evaluate when deadlifts get heavy. Is it hard off the ground or is it hard towards lockout, right? So a couple of things that you could do, a couple of checkpoints. We'll start if it's hard off, if it's hard at, actually, let's go first. Hard at lockout, put your hand up.
I'm not really sure, actually.
maybe hard off the ground. Is everyone else? Yeah, cool. Okay. So we'll go hard off the ground. I'm left-handed, so those who are hard at lockout, you just got to take it and just reverse everything. Yeah. Happy for individual questions after, but there's two of you. Yeah. All right. So if you have a difficult time off the ground, a lot of the goal is going to be in coiling yourself up. Now, this is when we get to the biomechanics elements of it. So if you can push your knees over the bar, you're going to get your quads working off the ground. Okay, so that's the first thing you should be focusing on. There's two things to be able to get your knees further forward. One is bringing your feet in, and one is pointing your toes more forward. Both of those are going to push the bar out away from you a touch, but it's going to give you more power off of the ground. Okay, from there, you'll be in a much more strong, stable spot. Okay, your bracing, really, really important. Okay, whether it's hard off the ground or at lockout. So when it comes to bracing, you're not just thinking about squeezing your stomach as hard as you can. What you should be focused on is two things. As big a breath as you possibly can, turn it into what I like to call a powerlifting gut, a Tom Stoltman gut. Push it out as far as you can, but we also want to feel that into our back, okay? So if we want to put hands on the hips, and some of the men would be particularly good at this, the dads in the room, and you want to see, can you tuck your pelvis under you? And can you point it back? Can you tuck it under you? Can you point it back? Expert. Okay, reason being, if your pelvis is pointed that way, i.e. like you have the fit chick butt, it's impossible for you to breathe into your back, okay? So when you take that big breath in, we want a little bit of the pelvis to tilt backwards, okay? If there's a bucket of water, we want some of that dumped at the back. Okay, so big breath in, push that stomach out, tilt into the back. Only after you do that do you push into your belt. Okay, next little bit is around torso position. If it's hard off the ground, your goal is actually going to be to bend your spine a little bit. All right, you can imagine if I keep my spine completely straight, I'm going to get to here. If I fold my upper back, now I'm down at the bar. Okay, now important distinction. You want to feel a stretch in your hamstring and fold the upper back. Folding the upper back is not harmful like folding the lower back would be. But fun little tip from physical therapist background, you have a lot less control over how much you round your low back than you think you do. Most of it is determined by the depth of your hip sockets. Okay, so only in we'll see it in real novice lifters when it's just like absolutely horrendous like that, like full Jefferson curl. Outside of that, so long as your programming is what we talked about before, risk of injury is lower under the pretense that we're not training to be healthy, we're training to lift a lot of weight, okay? So rounding the upper back is useful, okay? Next, shoulder blades, we want those to be rolled forward, okay? Reason being, when you're up here, it's way easier to pull them back than when you're down there, okay? Same principle applies as rounding the back. If you're here and you roll the shoulders forward, you get an extra couple of inches, yeah? Who here would like an extra couple of inches on their deadlift? Right? Okay, so weight-wise, you said most people are going to not need to strap in for this guy, yeah? Yeah. Cool. The only difference with gripping the axle over the other bars are you don't want to be trying to grip it like this, whether it's over, under. You don't want that falling out the bottom of your hand for the most part, okay? You want to get your hand as far around that bar as you can, okay? So actually cupping your hands, not using your thumbs can be very useful. So cup that as far around the top as you can, far around the bottom as you can, and that should be your position, okay? Now, when it comes to standard bar and deadlift bar, really the same principles. The only difference when you go from axial to stiff bar and to deadlift bar is that it gets harder and harder off the ground the stiffer it is. Okay, so those people who have a hard time off the ground, if we're talking like extremes and say there was an 18-inch deadlift in here, you would actually use a different foot placement for an 18-inch than you would for something off the ground. So theoretically, say it made a big difference for you on the deadlift bar, you could go narrower, feet forward, more rounded back for axle, and then say you really felt this was easier, you could go a little bit wider, flatten the back out a bit, and deadlift there, okay? Now, the trap bar, we're repping that out, correct?
No,
Just get it done? So presumably that's gonna be fairly heavy for most.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I got the weights that you guys.
It's gonna be too individual, but generally speaking, if we're going heavy with the trap bar, the number one error that people use is treating the trap bar like it's a barbell, right? The center of mass is really, really important, okay? Center of mass of the barbell in relation to your foot. With a bar, the best we can do is have that sort of midfoot, okay? Our shins are going to push forward a bit, so the bar is gonna start that far away. The benefit of the trap bar is you can bring that right in line with your ankles. This takes what's called the moment arm, or the effort at the hip, from 10 centimeters to virtually 0, okay? So when you're doing this, best way to self-evaluate is video from the side. And if this happens, when you lift up, and then when you get here, it swings back, you know you're making an error, okay? You should feel almost like you're reaching back behind you. Your hands should be back at your ankles, and from here, that bar can go straight up and down, okay? Your trap bar should be significantly higher than your barbell. If it's not, it's probably because you're too far out in front, okay? Deadlift medley, any questions? Yes?
Would you recommend a figure of 8 straps or just regular straps okay too, for speed of the event?
Both allowed? I would go, so it sort of depends. Figure 8s you can cheat. Figure 6s would be faster, okay? The important thing is, literally 9 weeks out, determine what you're going to use and get fast at that. It's sort of splitting hairs if you get good with both. But if you could use figure 6 and you just need that little bit, and I have some. Does anyone have some? Really quick offhand?
Behind you. On there.
I feel like I'm trying to find my own belongings at home. So yeah, actually, it's everywhere. So with the figure 6, if you can have these ready to go, and then all you have to do is that one loop around, that's much faster and more reliable, but it's going to be less stable, right? To get these as good as figure 8s in terms of not slipping off, you sort of need like 2 wraps. And by the time you wrap twice and wrap twice, you're probably into figure 8s anyway, right? With the trap bar, it's possible, depending on the weight selection, that is going to be way harder to grab than that, yeah? It's just much easier. Now, with the trap bar, it can be a little bit trickier to use the strap just because we're not used to it as much, but same principle applies where you can just loop that guy around, get yourself set to go, right? Now, last little bit, sorry, any other questions on the deadlifting portion of that? No? I have really good videos on YouTube that go a little bit more in depth about each of those pieces, so I wanted to be a bit quicker today, yeah? If you guys want to, go watch that. But with the medley, you have to determine what are you gonna be capable of on the day? Like, are you someone who's just gonna go like bang, bang, bang? Or are you someone who like, if I hit the trap bar, it's a PB and I'll be stoked, okay? If so, you're not going to do that as a 4th rep if you smash the first 3, okay? The most important thing is on the day, let's say the trap bar is going to be a big stretch. You should, pace-wise, you got this guy, walk, take a couple of breaths. You got this guy, take a couple of breaths. Okay, say this guy's starting to get a bit of a struggle. Then you should wait 20, 30 seconds before you try the trap bar. All too often, you see people at local comps, national comps, all the way up to OSG. You'll see people who completely burn themselves out. They get really excited and all of a sudden feel like they've got that like mom lifting car off her baby strength. And you're like, no, And if you try that once, if you try something close to your max once and it's not there, it's not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's going to happen at the expense of the entire rest of your day. Yeah? Does that all make sense? Any questions deadlifting wise? No? To go over it briefly, if we're struggling off the ground, feet come in, toes point forward, focus on pushing those knees forward, roll the shoulder blades, and chest points down. Okay? It can be useful to get your thoracic spine bent by tucking your chin. Yeah? You guys see, I do that by accident. I shouldn't do that, but I do. Yeah? So you could use that as a bit of a cue. Cool? Beautiful. Let's get these weights packed away.